We're good.
Okay. Call to order at 6:31 p.m. Roll call.
Denny Mariola,
Here.
Rick Charles,
Here.
Dennis Campbell,
Here.
Nancy Binzel, Janice Arch, Christina Stats, Amy Jones.
Here.
All right, so we have the minutes from last meeting. Is there any changes anyone saw that need to be made? Questions? All right, can I get a motion to approve minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we don't have any old business besides the.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out, last week, the Charter Review Commission proposed changing recommending amendment to the charter to section 20, and that is, or 21, and that is the Charter Review Commission language, where we talked about switching from the August 1st deadline to the July 1st deadline. I just want to let everyone know that there is a draft of that ordinance in front of you. I wanted everyone to kind of see what they look like, see what you're going to see going forward. I haven't submitted this to council yet. I don't know if we wanted to talk about when we wanted to start submitting them. I know we talked about doing them piecemeal as opposed to one big bulk thing at the end, but before I did anything or took any action, I wanted everyone to see a copy of that and talk about it, and then I'll take direction. Just so you guys know that the deadline for council is a week before the meeting. So it's the Thursday at noon before the next meeting. So it's not like a outrageous deadline, 30 days that we have to have this. It's just, once I have the ability to submit it, I'll submit it and we'll go on the next council meeting. So defer to the Charter Review Commission on that.
Did we get a timeline from the Board of Elections of when we can start submitting?
We can start submitting immediately. And they said the sooner the better. So there's nothing stopping the commission from starting to roll these out and hitting the ground running. But again, I didn't want to submit anything without the commission actually seeing what they voted on and make sure the language is good. I mean, this one's an easy one because we just voted, the commission just voted to change it from August 1 to July 1. But I wanted you guys to see a draft of what you're going to be looking at on other things going forward as well.
So with this, just because I did watch last week's video, didn't have a chance to ask questions, but I was sort of confused. What we're talking about doing is taking our work for this commission, having the deadline set for July 1st versus what's in the charter today, August 1st.
Correct.
Why would that be? Why would we need legislation to do that?
Well, so here's the thing. Nothing is stopping this commission from getting everything they want in earlier and setting your own deadline. What this does is makes it so in the future commissions have to have this in by July 1 as opposed to August 1.
So the thought process of this is to change the actual charter for future commissions.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's why I was.
But yeah, and in fact,
why we needed legislation for ours.
no, you don't. And in fact, this commission even talked about wanting to have all of the main work done and having everything submitted by June 1.
Right.
So that if there were any amendments, corrections, or final discussions, that we could still have time to reconvene in June and meet whatever July deadlines
So with this,
or August deadlines
by
too.
doing this, does this change anything else in the charter in terms of timing of when members are selected and approved and voted on? Or if the mayor decided to do it on May 1st to select the charter, as long as
As long as the work is done. Yep. And in fact, there is nothing in the charter currently about when the mayor has to start or appointing people or have them appointed by. And in fact, I think we briefly talked about it, that because of COVID last time, they didn't even get started until late. So they were on an even more accelerated timeline. But there's no legal requirement.
Okay. So then would that be something we would like to discuss, is the timing of it, so that something like that doesn't happen? Because we're moving this to July 1st. Does it make sense to also discuss as a commission, maybe we should talk about when the mayor needs to submit commission, start asking for applications, what that timeline looks like. Is that something you want to think about? For example, I mean, right now, January to August, that felt really, okay, that gives you, 8 months, 7 months. We applied, end of last year. We, were appointed in January, had our first meeting the first week in February, thinking, we had all of July too. Now we're pushing it up just because of the way the meetings are and everything, which is perfectly understandable, and I totally am in agreement with it. But does it make sense then to even codify the thought process around what that process actually looks like all the way through? Where applications need to be in by December 1st, appointment by January 1st, or even sooner, rather than later.
Sorry for being late.
Throwing it out there. I don't think we have to,
I'm chewing on that.
yeah, something we could chew on maybe.
So you're speaking just of the appointment of this commission by the mayor.
Right.
So are you saying that it should coincide with the changes that we are submitting to council?
Yeah, I would propose that if we're going to make this change here, that we would also maybe codify the timeline of the process. Right now, as it stands, and correct me if I'm wrong here, since you're from a legal opinion, the way I read the charter was there would be nothing stopping the mayor from appointing the commission on May 1st. And they only have 2 months to get something done. Basically, they can't get it done. So if we do have, and I'm not saying, throwing out hypotheticals.
Mhm.
We have a mayor out there, or even a council out there says, yeah, I'm going to drag my feet because I don't want anything to be changed. I don't want to do anything. And all of a sudden on June 1st, because it's required that he has to do it or she has to do it, they hurry up, grab 7 people, throw them on, get a commission, the council then approves. There's nothing that forces the mayor's hand to doing it in any specific time frame. My thought is, maybe we codify the idea that, the mayor at the end of the year or the prior year, or by January 1st, has to have some commission members, appointed and approved, so their work to be done by July 1st. That's how I would think about this.
I think, so I've got like 2 little voices in my head. I think one is that totally makes sense. We should do that. Then the other is like the devil's advocate that is like, has there ever been a mayor only give the council 2 months to do it? I don't like more rules and regulations.
Yeah.
But that's just because I tend to be like dialectic and argue, not because that's not a perfectly reasonable idea. I do think we should get it, like go with the earlier July so that you have that time to, I don't want to propose things and then there's no time to work on them and debate them if we need to, but that is, it is reasonable, but I don't know if there's any context that we need to know historically that that's ever been a problem with a weird mayor.
Not in my research that I found. I will say that in 2020, because of the pandemic, they started later and they had to do everything virtually. So there was an accelerated timeline on that. But again, that was a
Once in a
100 year
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
So
Extreme circumstance in that case.
yeah.
Yeah.
Throwing it out, I don't know if the process-wise, if we want to start thinking about that or table it for another discussion, if you guys want to have.
I think you hit on it right there. I think it should be something that's tabled and thought about. I would hate to make a decision tonight to change something that might be minor. Just because we're here and we'll make the change and submit it to council and the whole time. I think it should be tabled. And that we go home and think about it and then come back at our next meeting and make a decision on it.
Well, if I may make a recommendation too, just based on how you guys want to recommend to council, maybe in the future, and this is a good one to practice on, this right here, you vote to empower the law department to come up with a draft for you, and then you vote on the actual draft of the actual language. That way, we could come up with a proposal, and Rick, you could say, I move the law department to come up with a draft of that. We come up with language, we bring it to you, and you guys say, I like the idea, but I don't like the language yet. Let's amend the language. That way, you guys have a final vote on what's being submitted to council, as well as empowering us to do the work to come up with a draft. Because nothing's also stopping you guys from making your own drafts of these things. I just figure we have a law department here that drafts these things. We're happy to help, and that's part of our job. So, but I think if the commission's amenable to it, you guys would vote to empower us to come up with a draft, and then you would vote on the final draft before it gets submitted to council.
I like the process in general for this commission to do the draft and before we vote on it.
Right.
Because maybe that was just me thrown off by the wording then, because that's what I thought we were asking for last time. But
Yeah.
it turns out we were actually asking for the amendment, so
Well,
it's just.
I don't know if it was
Yeah.
clear too.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
if we clarify it and
Yeah.
we're all in agreement, then that's the process, and because again, you see, it doesn't exactly say in the charter review, this is how you do things. So if that's how the charter review commission would like to continue, I am happy to continue that way.
I think that'll also give us, as we continue to make some amendments, the ability to have some more open discussion in case any community members or anything like that would like to give feedback or engage in it. So it just gives us a little bit of pause to ask our opinions to as we go. So,
Then
So
we'll,
with that being said, this is what I would propose that we ask the law department to draft some language in this, and I would put it in this, just because of our section, that would start to outline a timeframe where commission needs to be appointed by and sworn in by a certain date. I would think that date would be maybe mid-January, so that meetings can start by mid-February. So then the mayor then would have.
sorry, my wife just walked by the
Oh,
door. So it's just like.
we're not laughing at you,
Knowing
don't
that I
worry.
was here, she walked by the door, so.
You said mid-January?
I would say January 15th,
Maybe when.
or second
I mean,
council
isn't that
meeting,
when-
second council meeting in January.
That's when we got appointed this year,
Yeah,
but now we're bumping it up, so you would think,
maybe.
Well, it's gotta be in that year.
oh, okay.
So you can't go before the year, because also what happens if a mayor is elected, a new mayor is elected because of the way it cycles through, and we end up with someone
Yeah.
at the end of the year that then has to, like, technically the previous mayor could select for the new mayor to deal with the new charter commission.
Gotcha.
If we
Okay.
don't hold by the after the mayor's sworn in
Okay.
timeline.
Second meeting in
That's what
January?
I was reading through, yeah.
I think second meeting in January, give it time for
All right.
the mayor and council.
Do we have to make a motion to actually have you, like, to just give you draft language? We don't need the motion, we just need the motion what we send.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
because here's the other thing too. I could foresee a situation where maybe one commission member wants to see some language and the rest of the commission's like, no, I don't want to, I don't care. I think every commission member should have the ability to ask for those. So maybe just and then we'll present in old business at the next meeting. That will be that. So we'll propose an amendment to this piece that includes that language in the next meeting.
And then we
Sounds
can
good.
talk about whether we want to take that piece out or keep it in and debate about it.
Okay,
All good?
Good.
thanks, Drew, for that clarification. All right, so we don't have any other old business, so Drew, you want to jump into giving us the rundown of Article 1 to start off?
Yes, and you started off with four articles thinking that, all right, let's try and get through as many as we can. Lucky for us, the first two should be a breeze, right?
I'd like to change the name.
So another.
Mr. Pink Bunny.
One thing I will point out on here on the commission, the charter that you have that we printed out for you, it also lists off here when the last time it was been amended. Now, don't treat those as gospel truth, because you'll see it'll say it was amended on this with this specific ordinance are at this election, and those numbers don't always meet up. But if you don't see a number on that, that means it's been in effect since the charter came around. So you'll see the first article, the name has not been changed since the charter was first accepted in 1958. And that's where they put in there about there that it's whether or not we're a village or a city. That's dictated by state law. It's based on our population size. So they were taking into account when originally, yeah, our population would increase, and in fact it did. I want to say in 63, 64. So within 10 years of the charter being accepted, went from being a village to a city.
So why wasn't that changed? Or is it?
It's automatically in here. It just
Okay.
it says when the municipality shall, under the Constitution and the laws, become a city, it shall be known as the city
Okay.
of Stow. That way, they didn't have to come back and do it. It just
Gotcha.
automatically happened,
Okay.
and there's no reason legally to take it out, because it also has a situation that, say we become like a Detroit and we lose a massive population and become a village, we don't want to keep being known legally as the city of Stow when legally we are a village.
And
So
have to legally keep changing that every time.
yeah, back and forth. And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen all that often, but it's happened in the last decade that a village has become a city in Summit County. I think it was Peninsula went from being a village to the city of Peninsula. And I want to say that was 2018 or 2019. They were right at the population cusp, and the census tract changed it, so they jumped up. So maybe it was 2020, 2021 after this 2020 census.
I don't follow city or town name changes, but there's been so many communities that have lost population across Ohio, so I can imagine that that's changed in a lot of places.
What I'll tell you is, luckily for Stow, we're pretty high above the limit to drop back down to be a village. But
all of Ohio would be in trouble if we became a village.
Same thing with boundaries. The boundaries haven't changed, and this also gives the potential in the future, if we were to annex different parts, it would automatically be incorporated. There is no plan to annex any property. None of that. So so I will just say
this is
that
all going loud, right?
Article 1, that's kind of it's kind of baked in. There's not much that legally I see needs changed, but this is the Charter Review Commission. I'm happy to draft any ordinances on that.
Any questions or any part on Article 1? All right, moving to Article 2.
Article 2 also is kind of that state law boilerplate language. It just says that we shall have the powers, general and special, that are the state of Ohio grants to us. It's essentially empowering language. As you can see, it has not been changed either since the charter, and it only has that one section on it. So again, I wouldn't recommend any changes on this. This is legal boilerplate language. Okay.
Any questions? All right, Article 3.
All right. So now we start getting into the bulk. The Article 3 deals with the mayor and the qualifications and the powers of it. So for the most part, you'll see not much of this has changed over the last couple of years, because a lot of this is also tried and true. Maybe they changed it after, a couple of years of being in, but it works. So I'll work through section by section. Just stop me if you want to discuss various things. Some of it you'll see had things that were changed recently, and I'll walk through what those recent changes were. But if it's anything over about 20 years, I kind of just left it. But I can obviously pull that if the commission wants me to. I just didn't want to go back to 1972 and talk about why we chose 4-year terms for the mayor. So if everyone's cool with that as the modus operandi going forward, that's how I'll operate it. So first section, very easy. It sets the election of the mayor at a 4-year term, and that the term commences on January 2nd. Any questions on that? Discussion on that?
Just on that article or that section, the last sentence or last phrase, and the mayor shall hold office until his successor is elected or qualified.
And qualified.
And
Yeah.
qualified. So let's say there's what would because of term limits, if the mayor is termed out and the next mayor that's elected, for some reason, is found not to be qualified, does the office become vacant then? Or by this section, does the mayor still continue to?
I would say the mayor holds that seat until, and we get down to the vacancy section of how it's filled. So I think that because of this section, they would hold that until the successor is selected.
Even though the mayor would be termed out of term limit.
Yeah, because there's also in the term limit section, there's a calculus that it's 8 years, but there's also provisions in there that if there are appointments or that sort of unexpired terms, I think, and we can get to that section too, when we talk about that section, we can clarify that. But I think in that instance, if there was a situation where maybe the new incoming mayor passes away before they're able to get sworn in, I think what would happen is either the mayor would stay in that seat until the vacancy is set, or there's also the provision of the acting mayor. So the mayor might be termed out, lose their seat, and then the president of council is selected as acting mayor until they're able to fill that vacancy. Yeah, I think that now the more I think of it, I think that's how it would go. It's an interesting hypothetical.
Again, chances of it ever happening are probably very slim, but just asking questions.
Yep, no, absolutely. That's why we're here, to work through these potential situations. All right, section 2, qualifications. This is where it sets that the mayor has to live in the city for at least 2 years prior to the mayor's election and has to continue to be a continuous resident and qualified elector of the municipality. Now, qualified elector is a legal term defined at the state that an elector is someone who has the potential to vote, not necessarily registered to vote. So just clarify that for everybody. And then territory annex. So if we were to annex areas of outside the city, that would qualify too. It sets the office as city hall here, and that the mayor has to devote full time and effort during business hours and other times as necessary, making us a full time mayor as opposed to a part time mayor. And that the mayor cannot hold other elected office or otherwise be employed now, nor hold any other office in the municipality, except as, and this is set by later in the charter, they're an ex officio member of planning commission. That means they're a non-voting member of planning commission, and that they are the director of public safety unless council determines otherwise. Any questions on qualifications or comments on that?
So just because I've seen it with other elected roles around the area, what does full-time actually mean in accordance to the state of Ohio law? Or is it not defined? Because I know there's some that swipe in daily and leave after an hour for some elected officials that it's supposed to be a full-time role.
It's not defined, and it's intentionally that way, because again, they're not technically employees in the same way that other employees are. When we say this employee is full-time, that means they have to put in 32.9 hours or that sort of thing. It is with the impression that the mayor and council, because there's also removal language in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That if they are not devoting it, they can determine what full-time is and what is not full-time. It's a good question, though.
I just have that. That was my note.
So what constitutes residency? How is residency defined or determined?
So this is interesting because the Board of Elections actually hears cases on this all the time. It's what what they're able to determine about your residency registered to vote. So if you're registered to vote there, it's determined as residency. Now, there have been cases about, well, this person owns the house there and they pay their utilities there, but we posted outside their house and we never saw them come home. The Secretary of State determines whether or not they are a resident of this. So it would come down to the Secretary of State saying, you're not actually a resident of this area.
So somebody lived most of the time in Hudson, but owned a property in Stow, and like, does that ever happen that somebody technically is living most of the time outside of the city limits?
I wouldn't say it's happened here. There have been complaints filed at the Board of Elections about this council person saying they're living there, but that's their mother's house. And it becomes, there's a hearing to determine it. And the board votes, and then it's sent down to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State determines whether or not you are.
We need to actually deal with that.
Yeah,
That
it's
sounds clear enough.
What was that?
School.
Oh, schools, yeah. That's a completely different topic for eligibility of office.
Schools is a big one.
What
Yeah.
if they're not registered to vote? If it goes to the, does that not matter?
I think where it states qualified elector, I think that can be, if you're not registered to vote.
But based on like that residency, didn't you say it was?
So the term elector doesn't necessarily mean that you are registered to vote there.
Right.
And the issue you run into, and to point, if I may, Councilman, there was a discussion when Councilman Herman, before he was on council, was applying to be on the planning commission. And there was a question whether or not he was whether he was an elector of the ward that he was applying for, because he was registered to vote at his parents' house, but he had just bought a house in a different ward. And I had to do research. So an elector is where you live. Even a qualified elector is where you can actually vote.
Okay.
So that I'll tell you that I think you have to be registered to vote to be a qualified elector. If I confused you, I'm sorry.
It's easy to do sometimes.
For the 2 years, is that 2 years of, like the date they first became a resident in that municipality?
It's prior to the date of the election. So it's 2 years from the date of the election,
Okay.
not the date of submitting your petitions or when, but it's from the date of the election.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions on that one? All right. Section 3 is boilerplate language. It's that they have all judicial powers which are conferred upon mayors of the city of by the state of Ohio. If you would like, I could get you a list of what those judicial powers are, but that, as you can see, was appointed back in the 50s and has been the same since. Very similar, executive and administrative powers. So this is where it states that the mayor is the chief executive. They supervise the administration, and it specifically sets out that they are not the administrative head of council, clerk of council, Department of Finance, and Department of Law. And that's where you'll see later each of those departments and sections have their own section and their own. So for example, the mayor doesn't have any administration over the Department of Law because I'm the law director and I have administration over the Department of Law. The conservator of peace means that they are over top of public safety. They are who the chief and the chiefs of both police and fire report to. And then they see that all laws, resolutions, ordinance are enforced therein. That's the job of the executive, is to execute and enforce the laws of the city. They also, this language is kind of, this is who gives this is what gives the mayor signatory authority on all contracts and makes it so no one else can sign a contract unless it's the mayor. Now, I will say this as a source of law, the mayor can then delegate and say, you can sign on my behalf, but that's a completely separate, but because the mayor is the only one that can sign contracts on behalf of the city. This is a fun one where it talks about the official seal of the mayor's office. In the thousands of contracts I've reviewed over the last 3 years, I have never seen a contract that requires the seal of the mayor, but this empowers him to do it if he ever needs to.
Really think he should be pulling out that seal.
You think so?
often? I mean,
I'll make a note to tell the mayor that.
we're not voting on it. It's
Do
just
you?
for
I have
fun.
my own seal.
it's not an official seal, but it's a logo of the law department that I have right here.
Like a big machine.
With the embossing of it and everything. And then the mayor should advise the condition and needs of the municipality to council. This is actually the way this is executed is, in addition to just keeping open lines of communication, the mayor has a report that he gives at every council meeting. That is how that is taken care of. And then also, and we'll get to it later on, other section about operating and capital budgets. We have separate sections later of how those are supposed to be done, timelines, that sort of thing. But this says that the mayor should, with the assistance of the finance director, create operating and capital budgets and present them to council. And then they're the official and ceremonial head of the municipality. Questions on that one? Hasn't been changed in 45 years, so.
So just for clarification, if the
Yep.
mayor is incapacitated to sign authorized contracts and has not handed that authority over, then that would be considered a vacancy in the office where then the president of the council would assume. the
Yeah.
position.
Yep. All right, veto power. Again, this is one that hasn't changed since the charter was first introduced. That it says that each resolution shall be attested to by the clerk of council, who we have in the audience here. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Mottram. And she has to promptly present it to the mayor for approval or disapproval. As you can see, if you take this version I have right here, every ordinance in the city has this last sheet attached to it. That's where it states when it was approved by council. It's signed and attested by the clerk of council per this charter section. It's signed by the president of council, further authorizing that council voted in favor of this. And then she files it with the mayor. She puts the date that she's files it with the mayor, because as you can see later on, the mayor has 7 days to determine whether or not they are going to vote or veto it or sign off on it. In the event the mayor does not veto it or just refuses to take action, it automatically is signed off on. Now, so the mayor would write vetoed and then sign it. From that point, council now has the ability to, at their next scheduled meeting, vote on it again, and with a vote of 5 members can override the mayor's veto. That's a fairly normal, having an override authority from councils. As you know, our federal government also has an override feature. Our state government also has an override feature within a supermajority. So, if you have any questions on this one, again, this hasn't changed. The timelines are pretty standard there. Gives the mayor a week to decide, and then it has to be done at the next meeting. They can't do it later than so they could schedule a special meeting if they wanted to, but it can't be later. They can't say, all right, we're going to talk about this in 2 weeks or 2 meetings from now. It has to be the next meeting, and it would be presented under old business, just as a fact of how it happens.
So if he doesn't sign within 7 days, it automatically goes in effect as if he had signed. Which is
Correct.
Opposite of a pocket veto in the Constitution.
Correct.
Is that just reading a couple of the other charters of different cities? It seems that's pretty standard across cities and municipalities.
The pocket veto or this?
Automatic approval.
Yeah, it would force the mayor to make a decision on something after a council has said, this is what we want to do.
So I have one hypothetical question. When it comes to, so obviously we talked about acting mayor and those processes. So if a mayor had not taken action on it 5 days in and then resigned or passed or anything happened, it would automatically take effect because there wouldn't be a mayor because the council wouldn't have time to host the meeting to actually vote on the mayor. could it be? This is literally the note I asked about the
No,
timeline
absolutely.
of a potential hole in the system. That's because like maybe it was a mayor that was planning on actually vetoing it, but then something happened or I just
And that, so what
worried about the
I'll,
hole.
if the commission would allow me, I'll jump to the next section to walk through that exact situation because
Great.
it took, so, sorry, I've been neglectful in introducing Steve Hooton. I've talked about him at the last 2 meetings. Steve is my deputy. So Steve is here tonight. We had on this next one, because I read it, I don't know how many times to walk through. All right, am I understanding this correctly? And we had quite a few discussions on this. So I'm going to read the next section and then walk through it and see if that makes sense, that wouldn't be an issue in the veto
Yeah, I
situation.
went and wrote back on it after reading that exit, so I'm
Okay.
looking forward to your
Got it. So,
comment here.
so the next section is about acting mayor, and that is if the mayor is temporarily absent from the municipality, inaccessible, or unable for any cause to perform the duties of the mayor, or until council elects a new mayor, how it happens is automatically, without any action, the president of council becomes the acting mayor. If that, for whatever reason, the acting mayor, which is the president of council, falls into the same situation, then council would have to sit down and vote. So the situation you're walking through, say there's a piece of legislation on the mayor's desk. After 5 days, the mayor, and again, hypothetical mayor, not Mayor Bourbonic.
Yeah.
Hypothetical mayor
Yes.
drops dead. President of council was in the same vehicle as hypothetical mayor X. Then we'd have a situation where there is no veto or there's no sign off in 2 days and it automatically becomes it. But if president of council is not nothing happens to them, they are automatically, the day that the mayor becomes incapacitated, they become acting mayor and could sign off on it or veto.
The first line is what confused me.
Yes.
On it. The president of council, comma, or any man designated by the majority vote of council. So it almost is worded to the average person that it would require the majority vote of council for one of those people to take automatic office.
And here's where I'll walk through my statutory construction and why the law department says the next line, the next section says in that order. And then if you skip through down to where it says with all the powers of the mayor in the event the mayor, comma, or one acting in the capacity for the mayor. So in that instance, the president of council automatically is acting in the capacity of the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where it sets, this is the order. It goes mayor, president of council, and then if both of them are incapacitated, then it goes to the vote of a majority of council.
Would that president of council, like in the hypothetical of on the 5th day, all of this happened, would they only have 2 days or was there extended to 7 days?
I would say they only have 2 days because the language, and you'll see here, it's filed with the mayor on this date. Okay. So that's the date that it starts keeping track of the time.
Okay.
Now, I will say there was some, because we read this one so many times to walk through that possibility, we pulled up, it's outside the 10 years or 15, it's within the 15 years, but it's outside the 10 years that I pulled things. But I pulled this one because I was kind of curious as the background and to try and read it to make sure I was reading it appropriately. And in 2010, Charter Review Commission put forth this version. At the same time, council also put forth their own version, which read, and I'll read it for you guys so you can see what the difference was. President of council or any member of council designated by a majority of council in that order shall become the acting mayor with all powers of the mayor in the event the mayor or one acting in the capacity of the mayor is temporarily unable for any cause or reason to perform the duties of the mayor or until council elects a mayor in the event of the vacancy of said offices as procedures are set forth in section 3.07 herein under. any member of council performing the duties of the acting mayor shall relinquish his or her council voting power on any motion. So you'll see the differences. The Charter Review Commission listed off those reasons A, B, C, and D, whereas council just said if there's any reason they are incapacitated. And it's funny, we pulled because both of them were passed by council, both of them were put on the ballot, both of them passed with over 80% of the vote. One got 300 more votes than the other, and that was the one that took into effect. So this was something that was debated pretty heavily about 15 years ago, and this is the language they decided on, and this is what the people decided on. So it's a very interesting background. It wasn't one when I was going through, this is going to be one we're going to have to talk about for a while. But the more I read about it and the more I figured we had to dig into it and give you guys that background. So that's the history and the background. I will push it to the commission to talk about it or move on.
I think they've done their hard work in 2010. I personally would choose to move on.
I appreciate you doing the legwork before you even know I would ask the question, so, thank you.
It was one that when a lawyer read it, and then when Steve and I were reading it, we went back and forth, and it took several readings and then pulling up to figure out this is what the original intent was of that ordinance. So thank you, Commission, for walking through that journey with me. All right, section, yeah.
If it took you guys that long to figure it out, it feels like that's an opportunity to create some efficiency. I'm looking for ways in the charter to create efficiency in government. That's a possible way. I'm not saying it is. That could be a possible way. And I wouldn't know how to do that or what right off the bat. I gotta admit too, I read it like 6 times. And it's like, all right, I sort of get it, but do I really? It's like, well, thank God for lawyers.
Is there a way to break it down more? Yeah, that it actually, like, average human would.
Or clarify it
Yeah.
for efficiency.
We are happy to do that. If you want to see a draft that's clearer language, summarizing that, we would be happy to present that at the next commission meeting.
That's actually what I was gonna ask, so.
Okay. All right, we will have that language then for the next commission meeting. All right, next section is about the vacancy of the mayor and how the mayor is selected if there is a vacancy in that seat. This was also, I will say, this was changed multiple times and proposed changed over the last several times. So we'll walk through this one and then I'll walk through those proposed changes and actual changes. All right. So in this one, the mayor, in the event the mayor passes away, the city council elects any Stow resident as long as they meet the qualifications of the mayor, and that person serves until the next general or special election for that said purpose. This one is a little different when we get to law director and finance director and council, that this is not the same way those vacancies are handled. So I want to caveat that, and it's also because, and I think, and this is just commentary here, the office of mayor is a lot different because they are the executive of the city. And then the council majority vote appoints the Stow resident. Sorry, 1 second. I'm rereading it, making sure I'm explaining it correctly from my notes. So this other language is about if it were to happen within 6 months from the date of the vacancy, if there's an unexpired term coming, they're saying you don't have to have an election if within 6 months the term ends. That way you're not having an election to fill a term that ends very quickly, because elections are very expensive and you don't want someone to have to go through just to hold it for 6 months. Now, the assumption is if the term is ending within 6 months, there are other people on the ballot, or there are ways of filling that that are not in our charter that are through the Board of Elections and federal or state law on elections. So this is kind of cleanup language and cover ourselves language. And it also says that the mayor may succeed him or herself if they are elected for the unexpired original term. So if they are appointed, they can succeed themselves. And we'll talk about how this impacts term limits when we get to the term limit section, because this is all addressed and has been addressed, but we'll walk through that. So if you have questions that deal with term limits, please hold those questions until we get to term limit sections, because that might be a night where we say, let's focus on just term limits, because as you can see in that spreadsheet I gave you, it's been talked about and debated almost every time and in between. So this is just about the filling of the mayor's role, not about term limits. If we, again, the commission's able to ask whatever questions. I'm just not prepared to go into term limits tonight because of the immense amount of background on it. I can go through with you guys the changes of the vacancies over the last couple of years, what changes happened, what were proposed, that sort of thing, if the commission is ready. So back in 2019 was when this language was shifted. It used to say, city council shall elect one of its members to fill the city council role. In 2019, it was expanded so that any citizen of Stow could become the mayor in the event of a vacancy, as opposed to just one of the council people.
That was ordinance 169, 2019 169.
Yes. Yep. Then in 2020, at the last Charter Review Commission, they tried to change it. This is in ordinance 2020-103 for anyone keeping track, that whenever the office of mayor becomes vacant for any reason, the members of city council shall elect or shall appoint by a vote of at least 2/3 vote of its members any Stow resident who meets the charter qualification to serve as mayor for the remainder of the unexpired term or until a successor is elected. So that means the way it works now, the mayor passes away. At the next election, you vote to determine whether or not they hold that next seat. So
The next council meeting, you mean?
no. So they'd be elected from the council,
Yeah.
but to hold the seat for the rest of the term.
Yeah.
So how it works right now, say in year one, Mayor X passes away, council appoints somebody. That person then, at the next available election, special election or general election, depending on when it falls, they are then elected for the 3 remaining years of that term. What this proposal from the Charter Review Commission said is, you're elected and you hold the rest of the term immediately.
So it eliminates the special election.
Correct. The need for an election.
That's what they proposed in 2020.
Yes, and that did not pass. And it took out all of the rest of the section about, provided, however, if a general election shall be further removed from 1 year, all that language removed. And it's saying, basically, the council picks and they serve for the rest of the term.
And as of right now, if the term is longer than 1 year for the next general election, then there should be a special election within 6 months of
Yes.
that.
Yep.
So, an example, we have a mayoral election in 2027.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
If the vacancy comes open in November of 2026, a special election would have to be held by May of, let's say October of 2026, a special election would have to be held by April of 2027, and then the general election for mayor would happen in November of 2027.
Correct.
Because of that 6 months.
Yep.
Okay.
Question.
Mhm.
So the elimination of some of the election dates it was created by the legislature a few years ago, does this cause any conflict with that if it's a May timeline? Or is there, because there's not a provision for March elections in the cycle anymore, and if it's within 6 months and it happens in October, it could cause a challenge, because that would fall in April for within 6 months. I'm just asking if that's
I'd have to research that for you guys, but there are provisions for special elections in other times. But I can
I
look
was just
that up
wondering,
for
because
you
the
guys.
elimination process that they went through, I don't know what the final wording was from the state legislature a couple years ago.
They eliminated August special
Was it
elections.
August,
Yeah.
not like, okay, I just didn't know if there was a
Yeah.
March one still listed in that structure.
I'd have to dig into that. I don't wanna answer authoritatively on you.
Appreciate you on that.
Yep.
I appreciate you always saying, let me go look into it.
Yep. If that's something that I will report back on that section as well on the vacancy then because I would assume you want to hear that answer before you ask me to draft anything. Yes, we will look into that real quick. Election dates.
Do we have
Perfect.
information on why the last charter commission wanted to make that change?
I could pull the meeting minutes and give you guys a summary for the next meeting.
Sure.
Because we still have those. We keep the meeting minutes from all the charter reviews.
Yeah, it'd be better versus speculating.
Yeah, knowing people's reasoning is really helpful to have context for where you are today.
Absolutely. Okay, then on vacancy of the mayor, I will report back for next meeting and we'll report that on old business, all right? All right. And then the final section of section 3.08 is a relatively new ordinance. It was proposed by city council in 2023 and approved by the voters that the mayor has to provide the state of the city address on an annual basis at the regular meeting in March, the first regular meeting in March of each year, and a copy of it has to be provided to council before or on the meeting date. So I will use this as a small plug that tomorrow night is the state of the city address. If anyone is curious, they can either come to the meeting or watch online.
I'll be there.
But this is the second year that we've actually had this, that the mayor has given the state of the city address.
6:30, right?
What's included in the city address?
If you want a copy of it, I can be happy to forward it.
I'm
It's
just curious, like, what information
does
he give?
each mayor does it differently.
Yeah.
What I will say with this mayor, the mayor has each department provide information and then give a summary of what's happened. So he actually is very good about getting the other elected officials also to get input into the address. So it's not just his departments. There is a section from the law department about what the law department has done this past year. And it's a pretty nice presentation that is all printed out. So I can send you a copy.
Sure.
Probably send it all those.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think reading this, there's no specification in what information he or she has to deliver. It's just they have to deliver a message. And
Yep.
It could be a one-sentence message. The city's in great shape. And
Could be.
They could walk right out.
Theoretically.
Yep.
Theoretically, right?
Yeah.
I mean, or it can go on for an hour and a half. Whatever.
Yep.
Whatever that mayor wants to do at that point in time. There's no codification in this that states the requirements of the information.
You are reading that correctly. And in fact, I have, if you want, the ordinance that passed that. They didn't, sometimes in the whereas clauses, they'll give justification. You'll see in your draft version right here, I put in the whereas clause that the Charter Review Commission has recommended amending Charter Section 2.02 of this to amend the date of the final recommendations of the amendment in order to accommodate deadline concerns with the Board of Control or Board of Elections and Council of the City of Stow. So I try and write the story so that in future they can pull from the actual legislation to find out the justification. You don't always find that in legislation. And this one, the only whereas clause says, whereas the council of the city of Stow is desirous of placing the following amendment of the charter to the city of Stow ballot. So if you want, I can pull the meeting minutes from that ordinance and you can see what the council people that drafted it and voted on it. But sometimes we're able to tell the story and sometimes we're not. But that, yeah, you're reading it right, Rick, that there's no specific requirement. All right.
I would say don't bother unless somebody else wants to know that.
I'm okay.
Perfect. All right. As I say, I got enough homework from that section on
We
that.
loaded you up.
No, that again, that's
Very true.
I serve at your pleasure. All right. So if we are still good on time and everyone's still happy, we can move on to section 4.
Yep.
All right. So this is the council, and this you'll see also has a lot of sections in here. But again, a lot of these are kind of boilerplate. So we can cruise through some of them. Some of them have been changed relatively recently, and I'll walk through those as well. But I just wanted to walk through, and I think we have some public comment that might come out of these. But we have a section on the agenda for public comment, just an FYI. So first, legislative authority. This is boilerplate language. It's very similar to the fact that the mayor is the executive. This is stating that our council is our legislative branch. So that one's easy. Composition and term. This one hasn't been changed in 35 years. It states that the council shall be made up of 7 members and 1 member shall be elected from the 4 wards. So that's 4 council people that are wards and then 3 at-large council people. They are elected to 2-year terms. And that sets it for both ward and at-large people. It is 2-year terms. Any questions on that?
So here's where I'm going to be the ornery one. Sorry, I'm going to give you homework.
Yeah.
So Hudson is 4-year terms.
Mm-hmm.
Kent is 4-year. Talmadge is 4-year, and Falls is 4-year. Why did we do 2?
Falls, I will throw you a caveat. Their ward seats are 2 and their at-larges are 4.
Okay. Why are we cycling through our council so quickly? And all of them, I mean, if 91 and 93, when they did this, that means we're doing all 7 at the same time.
Yeah,
So there's
and
like
that's
no
every 2 years.
stability.
Yep.
And they're spending half their time running for office rather than just serving Stow and fixing things. Is
And
there good justification for 2 years? Or can we change it to 4? That's
I will let you, the commission, make those judgment claims. What I will tell you is this is a historically one that gets discussed. It was discussed in 2015 and in 2020 about switching to 4-year terms.
What made them not switch?
I will have to pull the meeting minutes from you on that. But because if you see ordinance number 2015-106, they tried to change it to 4-year terms. That was defeated.
104. 2020 104.
No, it's
Oh,
2015-106.
2015 106.
Yep.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's going to be more. So 2020-104 also tried to stagger it. So this one you'll see. This one was a little interesting. They didn't just switch it to 4-year terms. They said that they shall be 2-year terms. However, at large in 2027. So this was, keep in mind, this was in 2020. They said in 2027, we're going to switch for the at-larges to 4-year terms. And then in 2029, the ward seats would switch to 4-year terms so that they were staggered. So at-larges were was
Sounds a
4.
lot better. Was it failing at the ballot or is it failing amongst the
Council. It was
council's failing?
council did not put it on the ballot both times in 2015 and in 2020.
Drew, is Akron still 2 years?
No, they're 4.
Or they switched to 4?
They switched.
It's been so long since I lived in Akron, so.
Yeah, that was, I want to say about 12, 13 years ago they switched.
When I was out of state. Okay.
And that, so, and here's the other thing, in Chicago, and each city does it different. And I can pull how exactly they're staggered too, because in Chicago Falls, the ward seats are every 2 years. So they're running every 2. The at-larges, 2 of them are in a staggered. So 2 of them are up on one time. And then the other time, like the other 2-year term, the other at-large is up.
Did council give a reason why they're not putting it on the ballot? If it's
I would have to pull the meeting minutes for you.
Cause I mean, I'd love to hear what other people think, but to me, it makes more sense. I mean, just for it, 2 years is so quick, and so they're spending their time, at least for 6 months of that, running.
Mhm.
Like, if you did a staggered thing, like all the wards 1 year, all the regular, all the at-larges another, and like 4 years, it just gives more stability, and then they don't have to spend all their time running for office rather than fixing potholes and doing all the things council should be doing. But
Yeah,
I'd love to hear what other people think.
I agree with that. I like the 4-year trends, and I also like what Cuyahoga Falls does with the at-larges,
The staggering.
staggering every 2 years.
Drew, I think it's important that we find out why council
Okay.
is shooting that down.
Yep.
Because it had nothing, it would benefit them.
Right.
They don't want to stick around for 4 whole years. They're so, they're just kidding.
But they're willing to put up the big signs and everything every 2 years.
Mhm.
I think it would be good just before we dive into any more, to kind of know the thought process behind it. Just so that way we have a little bit more data, but
Okay.
this would also be one of the things that if we decided that we were going to recommend a change, this is one of those things that I would say that we would for sure need to do, include some requests for public comment, especially asking for engagement.
Yeah, that's
Ask
great.
questions, including other organizations, including civic organizations and business organizations, also for their input on that, if we were going to do that. Because that is a pretty large change. Now, all the changes are required
really
now change,
reasonable.
but that's a bigger capacity one.
And we talk to council.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think talking to council, just get it from the horse's mouth. What the hell?
Yeah, it is a different council.
Right.
Yeah.
It is today.
Getting their opinion on it
This
might
wasn't
be
the
helpful
same
before we even put something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Forth.
I think in order, if we got some history.
Yeah.
Then talk to council, and then if we decide we did want to make some changes, then doing the public comment, et
So-
cetera.
I'm also gonna jump one step ahead. I know it's next meeting item, we'll discuss it. But just to add to this homework piece for you is our amount of wards.
Okay.
It's been like, we've had them since the beginning, the same amount. What is our comparable to other cities the same size? Are we representing larger sections of, like, larger amounts of population? Are we getting a little bit more nitty gritty into that process? I know, just because I work in Kent has more wards, but less population than Stow does.
How many
I'm
does,
just using that as an
how many
example.
does Kent have?
Kent has, oh God, I have to relook at it. I counted it, but yeah, I forget. I think it's 5 wards and 4 at-large council positions or something like that. So, or 3 at-large council, I don't remember.
Chicago Falls has 8 wards
Yeah.
and 3 at-larges.
I will say, just on the sheer basis that a friend of mine, a Stow High School grad, just wrote a paper that the number of people in the House of Representatives is unconstitutional. Should be like double that. I'm all for revisiting the number. It was a great
I would
argument.
I would like to look at comparables to the other municipalities around us, and, because it hasn't been changed, so that's just trying to get ahead. So when I eventually ask the question, you have some answers.
I appreciate that. No,
I
that's,
think it's really reasonable.
and I think that's a pretty easy, it's an easy ask for us.
Yeah.
Because that section of the Article 5 is one section long. So yes, we can do that.
Also look at state policy on that too,
Okay.
because I know that state has something like that.
We will look at that and have that ready for next time. And so we will also, just as a refresher, we will have the meeting minutes from the 2015 and 2020 council meetings discussing why they rejected putting this on the ballot for the 4-year terms.
Business is gonna be really long at the next meeting.
You know?
Can we make sure we also on the agenda itemize out those
Yes,
items under old
absolutely.
business?
Yep.
We might need to order.
Shoot, I almost
food.
forgot the one that we asked you to draft piece, like, so,
That's why we have a secretary,
Yeah, I know.
Dennis.
I know, I just,
She
I have
will,
to-
she will keep us on
I have
task.
to make sure I ask these things.
No, I get it. All right, so we're good on composition for right now? All right, 4.3, this is qualifications. very similar to the mayor, 2-year prior to the date of the election. For a ward seat, they also have to have lived in the ward for previous 2 years too, not just within the city. So just keep that in mind. And that they shall hold no other public office, and that they shall not otherwise be employed or hold any other office in this municipality. Any questions on that one? Okay. President and vice president of council. This is that at the first meeting in January, which is outlined in section 4.8, which we'll get to because there was also some proposed changes and rejections on that one too. But 4.8 is about meetings and when they hold the regular meetings, that sort of thing. They, from a majority vote the president of council and the vice president of council to serve for a 1-year term. So they do it every January at the organizational meeting, which is the first meeting that happens. The first regular meeting happens the first open day of the city. So that sometimes shifts. Sometimes it's January 2nd, sometimes it's January 3rd. It just depends on when we're off for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. It depends on when New Year's Eve and New Year's Day fall. So sometimes if New Year's Eve is on a Sunday and New Year's Day is on a Monday, we celebrate them on Monday and Tuesday. So it really would be January 3rd that the first meeting is the organizational meeting. So just a quick caveat, that was this point of discussion in the mayor's office this year. So like, wait, the organizational meeting was on the 3rd last year. Why was it on the 3rd last year? Well, it's because the way the 31st and the 1st fell. So just as if you're talking about mandating having a meeting on a certain day, there are calendar considerations why you would say the first, not the first open day, not saying it has to be on January 2nd or January 3rd or January 1st or that sort of thing. And that the office of president can only be elected to president of council for 2 consecutive terms, and then they're ineligible for the next year.
Why?
I would have to pull the history for that. It's just, I know tradition wise, they've only had a president of council serve for 2 years in a row. And it's in the charter, and that I can pull the,
Well,
I think I actually
just
have.
question the fact that, you have somebody in there and he's been in there he or she's been in there for 2 years. And then all of a sudden, not because of his qualifications or the job that he's doing, he can't run for that position anymore. What if he was the best person? What if he or she was the best person? I have it highlighted.
Okay. Hey. No, this, I can absolutely pull from,
You
because
have to go with all the boroughs members of council. That's all you're stuck with.
so this was amended in 2010, so I can pull that and see if that's when it was. I'm happy.
Don't spend too much time on it. If you can give me a one.
We,
sentence here.
we know where everything is, and I can get that for you, Denny.
Okay.
And then in the event the president is gone, the vice president presides over the meetings. That's pretty standard. And then also you'll see this is in tandem with the section we just talked about with acting mayor. They, the president of council and vice president of council, if they're in the position of acting mayor, they relinquish their vote. Very importantly, they do not relinquish the office. They relinquish their voting power, because the assumption is when a vacancy is filled, they are no longer acting mayor. So the acting mayor position would be for a couple weeks as opposed to a couple months. Now, there could be a situation where the acting mayor is then appointed to the vacancy of the mayor, but in that case, you'd go through the vacancy of now the president of council is no longer on council. You'd go through that process. So just a heads up that the reason this language in here on there is that they relinquish the vote, but not the actual office. That's kind of the rationale legally why you would want that language to be written that way. All right. Any other questions besides Denny's homework for me on that one? No.
Good job, Danny. We need to all give him a homework.
All right. So this one is the clerk of council position. This was changed relatively recently, but the change is, I'll walk through what the change was. It's kind of perfunctory, not anything of the substance of the job of the clerk. So the clerk of council is appointed and removed by council. This is the part that was added, this next sentence. The clerk's office shall be in City Hall adjacent to council chambers, and the clerk shall devote the time and effort as determined by council during business hours. That part where it says, and the clerk shall devote the time and effort, that was in there before. It was strictly the clerk's office shall be in City Hall adjacent to council chambers was added by council.
Someone was working from home.
No, actually, and it currently, you can see we're doing construction. Our clerk of council's office is currently located actually across the street in the police station. So we have the clerk of council here tonight, if you want to ask me questions about that, but that was added to the charter that they have to be adjacent to council chambers and in City Hall.
That was on the ballot.
You happy with your
Yeah.
office?
Am I happy across the parking lot?
Yeah.
No, I'm not,
We should
because
bring you back here.
Well, and
I
that's,
would like to be back here in this building, because during council meetings, it'd be more efficient if I have to make changes to do it and get it done. I don't have time to go across the street
Yeah, that
to
makes
do it.
sense.
Copier, and then, I have a great relationship with the law department, but sometimes it's like hard to know if I can get a hold of them or not with different things. It'd be better communication, other departments too, but we work closest to the law department.
yeah, we do work in tandem. In fact, at one point prior to their move across the street, they were located in the law department. They had 2 offices within the law department. Part of the reason was logistically that change. The law department had 2 attorneys across the street in the current spot where the clerk of council was. So the law department was split between, so that we have 1 secretary in the department servicing 4 attorneys that were in 2 separate locations. That was the reason for the original move. And now we're working through logistic concerns of moving the clerk back over here.
So you moved strictly because of the renovations?
They had no place for us to go.
Okay.
And we're
And
still
so
building that out.
It's temporary.
It was temporary,
Okay.
and it's been voted on 2 years ago, and we have not moved over.
Mhm.
Year and a half ago,
Temporary's 100
year and a half
years.
ago. But it was.
What-
She was in council meetings where Drew's gone and made a change to legislation, but I can't print it off on the legislation paper because. that's
Yeah,
across the
because-
street.
And I don't have the legislation
Any way
paper.
we can put in there that we need to make sure our renovations are faster, so she doesn't have
I
to be
would
in
love
exile.
that.
I will say,
What's
what I will say is I will,
Supply chain issues or something we can control.
I will pass that on to the mayor's office.
Okay.
The Charter Review Commission discussed this last night and would like to see it. That's all I can say at this
Okay,
point.
okay.
I know what he'll say.
I'm being ordered. I do know there's real world supply chain issues, but if we could nudge, that might be a little better, a little more efficient.
All kidding aside, what plans are in effect right now to bring her back? What is there anything being done? Because it makes perfectly good sense to have her back here than across the street.
I know that I have presented this to the mayor about this requirement and they've discussed it internally. I don't know where they're at. I know they've discussed it and they have plans. I don't know what those plans are.
That's fine.
I could push back again, but
No, that's fine. No, you don't need to do that. That's fine. I'll handle it.
and then just in this same section as well, this talks about how the clerk of council has to keep an accurate record of all legislation. It's referred to as the Journal of Council, and they have to keep that. Just as a complete aside, we keep both a paper copy of all legislation and a electronic copy. That's actually recommended by the Historical Society, that when you keep something permanent, you keep it in 2 mediums, not just in 1. In the event we change the way we read data, and we don't want to lose electronic files of historic legislation, so we can pull this years from now. Like in the event I need to go pull the physical copy, it is down in the basement right now. I can go pull the actual physical file that was signed by council up, going back to the start. So, and then it also says that council shall appoint someone to perform the duties in the event the clerk of council is incapacitated. Any other questions on that one besides the strongly worded letter I'm supposed to send to the mayor, Denny?
Don't worry about it.
All right, so the next section talks about the rules in the Journal of Council. This says that council shall set their own rules. Typically, like that, we just had rule changes. A president would come in and say, "Hey, I like these rules," or "I don't," and they change them periodically. But that doesn't really. It's just this section enables them to create their own rules of council and keeping the journal of that. Any questions on this? Next section, opening prayer at meetings, states that every meeting shall open with a prayer, and that if there is a choice to have a observance of a moment of silence, it has to be at least 1 minute moment of silence. Any questions on this one?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Just with our growing diversity in the city, I think it's important to like acknowledge that and maybe strike out the language of Almighty God, because not everybody believes in God. I agree with like the minute of silence. It's just my 2 cents on this one.
Would you like to see a draft of that for the next meeting?
Yes.
You got it.
Has there ever been a discussion around this in the past in any other of your knowledge?
Not that I know. I know that the city was subject to a lawsuit in the late 90s over the city seal, having the cross and the Bible on it. There is a rich history about separation of church and state, like lawsuits and Supreme Court cases. It's something that we actually talked about in the law department while we were doing our preparation for this. If you guys would like me to, I can do a primer on what is allowed and what is not allowed, and we can walk through that. I just didn't want to start on that because it is a pretty big topic without the commission asking me to, but I'm happy to provide a memo about the background of what type of religious observances are allowed in public meetings, that sort of thing.
Yes, I would like a copy of that.
Yep. I would be happy to prepare that. All right. Any other questions on that section? All right. Regular meetings. So it says that 7 p.m.s shall be the regular on the. This is where I told you at 7 p.m. on the first regular working day of January is when the organizational meeting happens. There were some changes to this one that I'll go through once we get through, but it says that the council shall convene. The mayor or the mayor's appointee presides over the meeting until the president of council is selected. Then the president of council takes over, and then they will preside over the meeting. And then that council shall meet prescribed by its rules, regulations, bylaws. This gives it kind of some latitude to be able to set their own schedule instead of putting in here, they meet every week at this time. This gives them the latitude to set their own regular meetings. And then it says, this last sentence is kind of boilerplate. They're open to the public. That's because all meetings because you guys went through my training, all meetings have to be open to the public. This one was proposed. There were some changes, and I will pull those out real quick for you. Let's find my notes. All right, so this one was first changed there was a proposed change in 2020 at the Charter Review Commission. This is 2020-105. They proposed to change that this language might seem silly because there was a change the next year. So keep in mind, they switched it from 8 p.m. on the first working day of January. Council shall convene and organize by electing one of their members as president and one of their members as vice president. And then they put in later on in the section, at all regular meetings of council shall, and they cross out, be held at council chambers. They added in within the city of Stow so that it doesn't require that council meetings happen in council chambers. They can happen anywhere in Stow. That was the proposal that was rejected in 2020. Now in 2021, there was a proposal from council to change the meetings from 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock So the proposal that was from the Charter Review Commission, however, they just say in there, council shall convene and organize at the council chambers of the municipality. It doesn't say they had that language about electing a vice president and a president of the meeting. And then they also struck out that in council chambers, allowing council chambers to have a meeting anywhere in the city. So the only thing that they didn't adopt from the previous was that clarifying that they are going to elect one of their members as president and vice president. What I'll tell you is the president and vice president is discussed already in that section we already talked about, that it talks about it. So I don't know why that was added and why that was struck, but that was the only two differences. And that's why I said, I'm going to read you this and you're not going to understand what wasn't approved, because most of it was adopted the next year by council.
Drew, just a quick question, no homework. Quick question. By law, you have to have a public meeting. I understand that. They changed the charter so that they could have the meeting anywhere in the city of Stow. How do you present that when they do switch it, that they want to have it someplace else, and notify the public and then not showing up here?
Yeah, we would still follow all state law requirements of public notices, and you'll see there's public notice requirements listed out elsewhere in the charter. We would follow all those. I can say, I think, and don't quote me on this one, if you think about when this original proposal was in 2020, it was during the pandemic. So they were saying we can hold the meetings wherever. Now, what I will also say, there was a state law change because of the pandemic that allowed meetings to occur via Zoom for a brief period of time.
Which is fine.
Which was, yeah, but that statute doesn't exist. It's sunsetted. So that state doesn't allow that anymore, but they could have been kind of belt and suspendering it. Hey, we're allowed to have our meetings anywhere in Stow as opposed to in council chambers. Mm-hmm. And then it was adopted the next year anyway by council, so.
Is there a way to make sure that meetings start at 7? Only because I've been sitting at council, sometimes it's 7:30, 7:45, and then meetings don't start until like 7:30 or 7.
What I'll tell you is there's no requirement, and they can't start it early, but they can start the meeting later because of other instances. So no, I'd say, but point taken. I'm there. I see you there. They're late nights. I think I've also told the story. I don't know if I've told it to this group, but I've told it to in my training. When I was on Cuyahoga Falls City Council, there was a meeting that we had to adjourn and reconvene because we went into the next day, and we had to adjourn and then Yes, it was due to a planning commission issue and a development that was not very popular. We had a lot of, so the meeting started at 4:30, and at 12 o'clock we adjourned and then reconvened to show that we had ended the meeting on that day and we had a new meeting on the next day.
Oh my goodness.
So, all right, special meetings. This was also, this lists out how they can have special meetings. It lists off, and this was also another point that I was, after we talked last time about requirements and meetings and that sort of thing, where we talked about, oh, we could always have a meeting to read these to meet the deadlines. Well, one thing, we can't have special meetings to make the deadlines to vote on things to put to the voters, because specifically it says in our charter, we can't vote on meeting, or we can't take final dispositive action on items that require a referendum or are subject to a mandatory public hearing, are subject to a discretionary public hearing, are subject to, that are not subject to an emergency, which we'll talk about at another point about emergency legislation, which when we get to it, it's section 4.14, because it's very confusing what emergency is for a layperson as opposed to emergency in a legal sense. because they don't mean the same thing. And then compensation of a public official, appointed, elected, or any municipal employee, or items pertaining to elections. They're saying you can't have a special meeting take final dispositive action on those items at a special meeting.
But it could be realistically like the second reading.
Yes, they can have, so if if they're worried about, hey, we're not gonna meet the three reading requirements, and we wanna have 3 readings, they could schedule a special meeting to have the second reading or the first reading and be able to do it. Just can't do it on the third reading. You also can't suspend the rules, which we'll get to also when we talk about emergency reading, what suspending the rules are and what that means. The rest of this, it says you have to, notice requirements are 72 hours for special meetings. This is pretty boilerplate language from the state about special meetings, apart from those specific listing off things. There were changes that I have from various times in the past, and I'll walk through what those were. So the first one was in 2020-106, which was Charter Review Commission last time. They tried to, so they took off a request on there that said there could be no more than 6 special meetings in any one calendar year, and that they have to occur in council chambers, mirroring the other language. That was rejected by council. But then, as you can see, the next year, council adopted a different version of this that took out the cap on 6 special meetings. They also added in the notice requirement, they added in that it shall state the date, location, and time, because they also took out the council chambers section that it can happen anywhere in Stow. But they also added in there that notice requirements can be sent by electronic mail by the clerk of council to the various council members, instead of forcing them to post or drop off at their house or their place of residence, thereby kind of bringing it into the 21st century. But the things that were rejected in 2020 were then adopted with some other additional changes in 2021. So that's why you're like, wait, what are you talking about? They rejected changes of a cap on 6 special meetings. You're not seeing it. It's because it was then accepted at a later date. So that's all I have for special meeting.
Drew, there's a sentence in the last paragraph. That section says service of such notice may be waived.
Yes.
Instrument in writing. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so that's saying that if a council person says, if a council person says, you don't have to notify me of any special meeting, and they write a letter saying you don't have to notify me and file it with the clerk, it doesn't require the clerk to then notify that council person of the meeting.
So it doesn't preclude the 72 hours.
Nope, no. Any other questions on that one? All right, 410 is the quorum. This is where it says you have to have 4 members to actually have a meeting that actually votes on items. When we get into actual types of votes, and that's legislative actions in the next section, it requires any type of legislation passed in the city needs 4 votes. So that means if we only have a quorum of four council people, all 4 of them have to vote to be able to pass anything. Otherwise, it fails. So it's different than a normal quorum that, say we only have 4 members of the Charter Review Commission and 3 of them say, yeah, let's vote to pass this on. That still meets the qualifications. This specifically, these 2 sections in tandem right here, it requires 4 votes of a council, no matter how many members are present at the meeting, before it takes effect. And that's kind of leads us into the next section. So if you'll let me jump in, unless you have questions about quorum. It's a pretty standard one. You have to have a majority to have a meeting.
Yeah.
All right, so the legislative procedure says that all legislative actions shall be by resolution or ordinance in written or printed form and can contain only one subject matter, which is clearly expressed in the title. This is pretty broad about what is one item, but you kind of want that leeway to be broad while also restricting us from saying we're passing the budget and we're doing this and we're changing personnel policies and all that. Vote on all of it at once. It keeps it the ability to say, you know, we're changing HR policies and we're changing the budget and we're, you know, we do it by their own pieces of legislation so they get straight up votes instead of having omnibus pieces that get discussed ad nauseum. Everything requires 4 votes except for where it's required by a larger provision. That's in a later section. We'll go over that about what requires 5 votes or 6 votes. But this specifically says you need 4 votes, not just a majority of present council people. You need 4 votes. And then this next section is where I talked about suspending the rules. Every piece of legislation has to be read at 3 separate council meetings unless council votes to suspend the rules. And this is where it says suspension of the rules requires 6 votes of council if all members are present. If any members are missing, it requires 5 votes. So that means if there are only 4 members present at the meeting, they cannot vote to suspend the rules because they still need at least 5 votes to suspend the rules. Any questions on that?
Is this state law or what is, because all through this charter, if you've read it, 4 votes, 5 votes, 2/3 votes, it's all over the board.
Yeah. What I'll say with suspending the rules, I mean, it's pretty normal to have things read at 3 meetings. It also is pretty normal to have some supermajority. I'm not going to say 2/3, 6 votes, that through some supermajority to have a requirement to suspend those rules. Because, and I think I don't know if we walked through this, we require legislation to enter into a contract to purchase a car. In an instance like that, you probably don't need to read at 3 separate meetings to purchase a car, because that means that's 6 weeks right there, because they have council meetings every 2 weeks. So, and read in tandem later with the emergency resolution, which we'll get in, we're talking 6 weeks at 3 different council meetings. And then 30 days after that, if it's not passed as an emergency, which we'll get to that section later, there are instances where you want to be able to suspend those rules. But should it require more than just a simple majority? That's the reason is, yes, that's pretty normal throughout there, that through some supermajority requirement to suspend the rules. Hope that answers your question, Denny.
No, it does. You did a fine job.
Okay. So public notice, this is actually, we have a comment. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Is this the piece, and you're mentioning every time we go into a contract or something along those lines, it has to be a vote. I said at one council meeting, there's probably 35 votes on, I want to buy this, I want to buy this, I want to buy this. And they suspended the rules, they read the whole thing, it just felt very inefficient. Is this the area where that could be discussed or covered, or is there another area to talk about that?
There is an area in our codified ordinances that talk about what needs to get council approval and what doesn't. And those are, we call them BOC limits or Board of Control limits.
Correct.
Because the city has a Board of Control that meets we meet every Wednesday. It's comprised of 5 members. It's the mayor, the law director, the finance director, the engineer, and the service director. That's set by codifieds. It's not in the charter. Those can be changed by council at any time.
Okay.
So basically what happens is if anything is above $5,000, it has to go to the Board of Control for approval. If it then reaches $20,000, if it's above $20,000, it then needs both Board of Control approval and City Council's Finance Committee approval. If it goes above $25,000, it needs Board of Control, Finance Committee, and full council meetings. That's not something that this commission can change. It's something that City Council would have to change.
Okay, but what about You originally mentioned this is the area where every single item has to be voted on. So this eliminates those larger types of omnibus bills where something like that could be created.
It's saying that all legislative action of council has to be in the form of a resolution or ordinance.
Okay.
So the actual, that's like council can't just walk in and say, you know what, we're going to change our HR policy. We're voting to say that you can be fired after 60 days.
Mhm.
It's saying that if you wanted to do that, you have to put it in resolution or ordinance format before you did that. So the inefficiency and the discussion of passing everything like that, any purchase like that, that's not falling under this section. That's falling under our purchasing process, which is under that's under the
So if the
codified.
purchasing process was changed in code to be able to pass a larger spending
Yeah,
portion or whatever, then each one of those individual purchases would have to.
correct. Yep. And the other thing too is some cities, just as a side too, about when you're talking efficiencies and voting on each thing individually, the county has what they call a consent agenda. So those things that are standard, we do every year, pay the water bill, buy Coca-Cola products for the golf course. They put it on a consent agenda and they'll vote on every item as one, as opposed to each individual. So that's codifieds and that's council rule. That's not charter.
Okay, so there's nothing, okay.
Yeah, there's nothing in this section that is impacted by that.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
Public notice, this requires that we give all resolution ordinances, everything gets posted. So you can't see them right now because the boards are all down because we're painting the walls. But as you leave, look, you'll see a giant posting board that lists all the ordinance, all of these that we vote on get posted there and at 6 public locations as listed in this section right here,
Which they want to change.
which is what the request we had from one of the clerk of council to discuss switching it from 6 down to 3. Now, in our codified ordinances, and I have that pulled up too, it lists in the codifieds which 6 locations those are. And that is currently
City Hall, Safety Building, Firestone. So where I work. Fire Station 2, Fire Station 3, Library, and the Senior, and the Community Center.
correct. You got it, Denny. So the request from our clerk of council is she is stating that, and you can speak during public comment if I screw this up or if they have questions, or if the commission wants to jump in and ask questions. She just stated that it appears that the 2 fire stations, no one goes to those 2 locations to get their information for council. And the safety building, just for everyone's edification, is the building right across the street or across the parking lot right over there, which is also Fire Station 1 and the police station. We post here at City Hall. So the clerk of council is saying, why should we post it at both buildings when it's already posted here? And if no one's going to the fire station for those. So what I will also say is if you make this recommendation to switch it down to 3, we would then also have to ask council after this passes to amend the legislation to take out those locations as well. So it's kind of a 2-part section that would have to.
Next question, does it list those as required,
Go ahead.
as required places to post in the code? Or does it list it as an option to, like, those are the 6 options and therefore they have to post 6 places because the charter requires 6 places for it to be posted?
So the charter requires 6 places. And so they then say in the code, it says those 6 places will be these 6 places.
Okay.
So if you were to change that to 3 places, we would then change, because the charter sets the minimum, right?
Yeah.
So they could keep it and say, we still want to keep posting at all 6. We're meeting the 3 requirement. But to mirror that, I would assume we would propose an ordinance change after it passes to say, let's do the 3 places, these locations.
There's no, I'm sorry.
There's no virtual location on there. I mean, is the website a location and could that be one? Like get rid of 2 fire stations and add, it has to be on the City of Stow website?
It is, I think it is in the
It
charter.
is.
Okay.
It
It doesn't count that as a location.
no, it's saying
Physical.
physically public
Okay.
location are these six public places.
Do the public places have to be owned by the city?
No, because the Stowe Library is not owned by the city.
Okay,
It just is specifically stated public places.
okay.
And I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Sonia, there were other locations like the Acme on
Yeah, when I.
59 at one point.
There was several other places, it was a minimum of 6. And the schools were part of it, and then COVID happened and we couldn't even post in the schools.
Mhm.
I don't even know how much traffic that they had at that time, either, but
And you can't really get in the school anyway unless you're.
yeah, we did in the vestibule areas, so.
Just do it.
Can we discuss with council what they recommend and their opinions on this as well?
Can I,
Are you asking if you can discuss with council? You're for
Commission or?
absolutely the commission can do that.
I think it's important to like have those places and like see like where else in the community they could be posted.
can I also ask, since we got this was sent to us as a request, I'm gonna ask for that comment now, for the feedback now. As the chairman, I'd like to hear from you, so that way.
Your commission.
Yeah.
That's-
Oh, just that, I mean, right now we're so much digital and virtual, like, or most people do get their information electronically. We can easily send legislation out electronically to anybody who asks for it. We, all of our agendas and everything on the legislation is sent out to everybody by web. So that's the thing. So these posting places are for we have no paper anymore. Some cities post in the paper. We have no paper. And it's also costly to put it in the paper. So the posting locations, which some cities do, we only have to do the titles. We don't have to do full legislation. Because that's in the ORC, we only have to do the titles. But like literally we meet our deadline within 10 days of posting these locations for those fire stations, like, and there's no tracks, okay? It's not even easy to get to the one fire station. I mean, I'm always worried when I pull in there if a truck's gonna come out, you know, that's little, but you know, I think this is good for people who don't like paper, like hard copy. I see it used a lot at the library. I see people use it here a lot. And now we decided the community center, the senior center, because there's gonna be a lot of traffic there, which I'm sure those people would like to see the hard copy. Safety center is behind a glass. And I mean, it is right across the street. I mean, it doesn't matter either way, but it's behind a glass. Display. So, and I said, we tried the schools didn't work out. They had it at Giant Eagle when I first started, was one of the locations. And then I was told I didn't post there, that was before COVID. I was told Giant Eagle didn't want it there anymore. So.
My thought had been, what if you put it at the high school? Because
We had.
you're giving students the opportunity to begin to learn about their city long before they vote. It's a civics opportunity, but if it's not working there, then that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that was one of the locations originally when I first started,
Okay.
and which we did.
We got rid of it. Okay.
Just do it. I mean, if we have 6 now and 3 of them are not getting any traffic and 3 is working,
So we would be looking at changing the charter to only require no less than 3. And then
I
let
think that's.
council decide where they want to post.
you have to remember
This
though,
is physical posting, right?
It's
what we
specifically
decide,
physical.
correct me if I'm wrong, President, what we decide today and we get through council doesn't mean that it's forever. That it can
Oh,
be,
yeah.
Another
This would-
charter review
This would
continues.
also set the floor versus council still require, they could
So do
choose,
6.
still require the 6.
They could-
It would just reset the
Mhm.
floor at 3,
right,
Yeah.
so.
right.
But we're talking, so this is what I would propose, Dennis, I think I'm right with you. Go with the three, maybe draft some type of legislation, talk about the three at a minimum, right? And then if we wanted to, down the road, propose, sister legislation in ordinance to say, these are the three you should be posting at. We're not gonna require it through the charter, these are the three you should be posting at. But if you want to do more, that's perfectly okay, blah, 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 right?
Right. And if you need to, if we see that, or they see that it's necessary to do the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, tenth location,
Right.
the way the wording of the charter would be, that you just add it.
Yeah.
Add those.
Yeah, while the city ordinance, so if we acquired another facility that would be high traffic,
Mhm.
it'd be a perfect opportunity for the council to make that decision.
Right.
So that would be the physical posting.
Yep.
And then what about virtual posting? So right now we post only on the website?
That's the only virtual that I know of.
That's the only virtual that I would say that is owned by the public in some way.
Meaning that the city has control of a specific website versus a Facebook.
Facebook, yeah, that's,
Exactly.
doesn't restrict them from posting it on Facebook, but it doesn't require it, because what if Facebook shut down tomorrow and then they have a 6 months, it's like half
But
the
you
time.
can say social media in general, the city social media. I mean, I don't think there's a problem with that either. I don't wanna have a problem with that, working with the communications to do that.
It's
mean,
logical
the
that you
city-
put it on all the city social media before you put it in Fire Station 2 and 3.
I agree with that.
To me, that would make more sense, but do we require
But yeah,
all social media or website in one?
all social media.
One social media.
I think any of the social, I think we would have to do generally the social media that the city's using at that time. I don't think you specify which one.
Cause they could change. I would just do general, the social media that they're using. That allows for changes in the future.
And again, we only do the titles. But you could do a link to the actual
So-
legislation.
You'd probably get more engagement for people if you were posting it on social media than you would at the library.
I would agree with you.
Sadly, I wish.
Yeah,
the library
with social
would
media and
let
without.
them.
Yeah,
But they
Yeah.
do steal
Yep.
it. They do steal it from,
that way we
I mean,
have
people take
recommendations.
it.
So great.
It's public information.
Yep. I'll have 2 drafts like that then.
Even my library book downloads, I'm getting them all in Libby.
I still use the hardbound copy.
Yes. Way to go. Way to
Can't-
go.
Can't give that up.
It's just the audiobooks. I drive so much for my job. I get through so many books that way.
I'm too ADHD, I will never focus on an audiobook.
Won't have to hear either.
Trying to read Tolstoy, just speed it up a little bit. It'll get you through all the Russian names.
That's how I got through Moby Dick, was audiobook, but
Speeding it up, yeah.
I'm on Infinite Jest right now, and I'm reading it physical paper copy. It's a slog,
Oh, yeah.
but I digress.
What's the next section?
All right, effective date of resolutions and ordinances. This is where I'll tell you. So normally, legislation becomes effective 30 days after the mayor signs it. And the only way that we can make it effective upon the mayor's signature is if it is determined to be an emergency. An emergency, to have an emergency, you require, so if you pull up on here, section 9 on this piece that I have drafted here, it says this ordinance was adopted pursuant to section 4.11 of the charter, which is the legislative procedure listed earlier we went through, and is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public health and safety. And this is the thing that changes for each legislation. For the reason that said ballot question must immediately be sent to the Board of Elections to meet the board's deadline of September 5th, 2025, within which to receive questions for this November's general elections, so the electors are given proper opportunity pursuant to sections 1901 and 20 to vote on the question, and pursuant to 4.13 of the charter shall take effect upon adoption by council and approval of the mayor unless otherwise. So that section, if we want to pass something as an emergency, has to be listed. You have to say all that language except for the thing that changes in there. And that's the reason it is an emergency. That emergency can be as simple as we have to purchase a vehicle, and if we don't purchase the vehicle quickly enough, it will disappear because inventory is hard to find. Or it doesn't have to be an emergency like life, limb, and safety.
Like there's a tornado and we need to.
We got to build something real quick to get the turn it in the. It doesn't have to. So when I say emergency on a legal same is not the same as a layperson's emergency. It has to. You have to have a
Urgent.
justification
Urgent
for
deadline.
exactly. So that is what it means here, where it takes 30 days for something to pass unless it's passed as an emergency. This is state law. It's similar everywhere that unless it's an emergency, it takes 30 days. And that's why you'll see on most legislation in the city and declaring an emergency. We're not declaring a state of emergency. That's separate. That's under that the mayor has that authority and can do that. But it's when we say on a legislative piece that we're declaring an emergency, we're saying that this would take effect upon the mayor's signature. Now, when I talk about different levels of vote passage of votes, to declare something, to pass something as an emergency, it needs 6 votes. If all members are present. If not, if any member is missing, it needs 5 votes. Because again, the assumption is that something would take effect 30 days after the fact, unless it's pressing. And at that pace, you need a supermajority to pass it. Again, that's pretty standard elsewhere in the state as well. But I wanted to walk through because a lot of people don't realize that when you see, well, it's not an emergency, there's no life, limb, or because we're trying to buy a car. Well, it's emergency means something different in this context. Any questions on that one?
So one member of the 7 is gone. There's 6 there. You need
5. Yep.
If 2 are gone, all 5 are there. If there's only 5 there, you need all 5.
Correct.
Okay.
And that actually happened about a year and a half ago. I was trying to appoint an employee because one of my prosecutors was leaving and they were leaving relatively quickly. And I needed to bring another prosecutor on board quickly to train them. And 2 members were absent. Luckily, all 5 voted in favor that it was an emergency, but that exact instance happens, Rick, that if there are 2 members, and that's the same thing, if there are only 4 member presence, we're not passing anything on first reading and we're not passing anything as an emergency. Now, what would happen though, say we go to a vote and it says we're declaring an emergency, we want this to pass as an emergency, and we only get 4 votes on it, it still passes. It just doesn't take effect immediately. It takes effect after 30 days. Okay? All right, the next section. Are we still good on time? I don't want to, if the commission wants to pause and me take this up the next time, we can always pause.
Your house.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4 more sections on this in this article. So I'm perfectly fine continuing. I just know we're now at 8:30, so we've been going at it for 2 hours. So
I'm getting close on time.
Yeah.
Mr. President?
Tight on time. Close, tight.
Let's get through the compensation and bonds real quick and then
okay.
we'll push to the next meeting the rest of that.
All right, 415. This was changed in 2019. It states that council shall set the compensation of the mayor, finance director, law director, and members of council, and each officer, employee, or member of any board or commission of the municipality, whether elected or appointed, except as specifically provided otherwise in this charter. And then it says, provided any increase in compensation for an elected official prior to taking effect shall be submitted for approval to the electors of the city of Stow in a general election, which submission shall include the percentage increase and the new salary within the budget language. Provided further, no decrease in compensation shall be adopted by council during the 75-day period that begins on an odd year or municipal election day. So this states that council sets the salary of elected officials and employees of the city, but before they make any change, any increase to an elected official's pay, it has to be voted on by the public and it has to state what the new pay is and what the percentage increase is. That is what was added in 2019. Previous to that, it just said that council got to set the pay. And then it also says you can't lower the pay 75 days before an election.
So,
If there's a decrease, do they have to say?
It doesn't have to be approved, but they can't do it within 75 days of an election.
that's,
Just something.
I
no,
get you.
I'm actually just curious because I
We
think
need more jokes.
that's a potential, the not requiring it to change it for a decrease, to me, is a potential weapon by council, in my opinion on that, because realistically, council could say, you know what, we're disagreeing with the mayor right now, we're decreasing his salary down to $1. So you've got
yes.
stuff for me. I
Yep.
like
So-
he knows what I'm gonna ask.
So one thing I will say, there's also some state law about not changing elected officials' pay during the term at that time. And that's for that to combat that exact instance. Now, I will say that back, and there's a rich history on this one about,
I'm sure there
about
is.
compensation of the public employees and of the mayor's rate. The finance director and the law director's pay was last changed in 2014. And so that was the last time it was increased or changed. It was increased. I'll tell you guys that. And that happened before this change that it had to go on the ballot. Council was able to just change the salary. Back in, where was, I gotta find the exact section because I printed off all of it. There was a fight back in 2011 or 2012 between the council to reduce the mayor's pay. So the mayor's pay used to be set at 90,000. A council person proposed changing that to 81,000, and that failed. But then the mayor proposed adjusting the pay down to the current, or no, that's what it was. Council tried to cut the pay from 90,000 to 83,000 and said that all of that difference in pay should go to streets or purchasing plow vehicles. The mayor then, the mayor then submitted an ordinance at the same time saying, cut my pay to 82,000, but don't make it go to street plows or fixing the roads. And that is what was adopted. So the pay of the mayor was cut from 90,000 to 81,900.
What year was that?
That was in 2011,
And then it
2012.
got adjusted back up.
2011.
No, it did not get
And
adjusted
it
back.
was supposed to be
14.
effective January 2nd, 2012. Or
2012? Yeah,
And that's the current mayor's pay.
that's the current mayor's pay. Now, the finance director and the law directors was changed in 2014, and that was where it currently sits at right now, which is 82,750,
So right below
right above the
right
mayor's,
above the mayor's pay.
Yeah.
about $1,000 above the mayor.
We can't change the pay. We can just, there's a tool. Interesting. It's just interesting concept.
I think the whole line about the plows is very ornery and funny.
I don't disagree with you. It was fun to read that background.
Any other thoughts for Drew on those? All right, we'll pick up from there. Next meeting, we can discuss the next meeting time and date, and then also what other sections we may want to cover. So let's talk about dates that work moving forward. When do you start your leave?
The last Wednesday in,
Okay, so we've got some time.
yes,
I just want to make sure that I'm remembering that.
thank
So,
you, yes. Thank you.
Any issue with next Wednesday?
Well,
The room's open.
Room's open? you said?
Yeah, room's available.
So 6:30 again, so if people have a chance to eat before they come.
Does anybody is there a reason we couldn't do it Thursday?
Council meets every other Thursday.
Yeah, they're not meeting on, yeah, they're not on the 13th. They're on this month. It's normally the 2nd and 4th. This month and last month, it was the 1st and the 3rd. Just as a,
Next week, the Thursday would be a little better for me if we could do that, but I don't need to be the same.
I would be unavailable on Thursday.
Okay.
So, but I don't wanna. Is anyone unavailable on Wednesday? Because we can also keep it tighter if we need to as well.
I can come on Wednesday.
That's fine.
It's just,
Cool.
all right, so
Wednesday.
Wednesday the 12th,
Yep.
6:30.
Want to set the 19th also,
Sounds great.
next
to
two
me.
Wednesdays,
The room is not available the 19th here.
20th.
We can still have
Or
the
another
meeting
room.
if you want, just we would
We
have
have
to
to
look at a
find another
different
room.
location,
And that would be
probably charter, council chambers.
council
Mm,
chamber.
yeah,
No?
Bulldog Guides
No,
packing.
it's not, yeah, it's not.
Packing.
Well, we're gonna do the steering committee on the 19th.
Mm.
So the only place that you guys, maybe at, across the street at the safety center?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we could check into that location.
Yeah.
Right across, there's a conference room, an open public conference room in the police station that we utilize too.
It might be good to try to get some of these on calendar springtime. I would imagine springtime prior to vacation, people are gonna be rushing to try to get all the meetings in before they go on
Okay.
vacation, so.
we'll say I'll be traveling for work the 19th, so I'll be gone, and then 2 weeks after that I'll be gone, so, but carry on with that one.
I'm also not available the 19th. So.
Maybe the 20th then?
20th
That week is
council.
just.
That-
Yeah, I'm in
That
town.
is-
There's a
that is like
council
my
meeting
one
that
week
night,
where
too.
I'm slack. I travel, I have everything that week. So if we need to meet, fantastic, but I just won't, I will not. be able to be there.
So we're agreeing on the 20th,
We've got the 12th.
12,
Well, for
the
sure.
12th.
and then something that we get the 20th.
Anyone have issues on the 20th?
City
I know I
council,
I'll
won't
be,
be
City
able
I'll be
council,
traveling.
city council.
Yeah, I
council.
won't be here, so we might need to skip that week. It's on because of travel and stuff like that.
Look at the 26th.
What's your opinion, sir? On that?
No, I'm okay with
Okay, cool. So then we'll look at the week of the 24th.
I'm gone all that week, so.
Okay? Any other issues?
Right.
Any other issues? Anyone else have conflicts that week?
What week?
The week of the 24th.
I'll be around.
I have a conflict on the 27th, but
that. I'm good on
The
the
26th, we cannot do the 26th.
How about the 25th? Okay.
Planning commission, but
that doesn't,
It does, yeah, it's
yeah,
in
don't worry
there.
about that.
All right, 6:30 for that
25th?
one on the 25th. I just realized I did not add the 12th to my calendar. My wife will kill me. Doing that now. Okay. And then what about the week of the 31st?
Monday?
Yeah, any, that
wide
week.
open.
Yeah, I'm around.
Wednesdays?
I'm also good.
I could do Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 2nd? I hate April Fools, so I don't want to do anything on that day. All right, Wednesday the 2nd?
We could do a really fun drink.
I was gonna say, you know what I'm gonna do? Dennis,
I know you will, you'll mess
I'm
with
gonna
me.
text you on, hey, why aren't you at the meeting?
That'd be the brotherly thing to do.
It would, wouldn't it?
So that gets us through the end of the month.
Why don't we just go for there? Stop there and then maybe on the 26th, then we can revisit,
Yeah,
start looking at April, the rest of April and into May.
yeah.
Together.
That way we also see where we are, how far we've gotten through
So the
pieces
12th,
too.
the 25th,
Right.
and
We
the
need
2nd.
it.
Yep.
Doing the 26th or the 25th?
I have-
That Wednesday, 26th. Or no, 25th.
Yeah, I have the
25th, my bad.
It's Wednesday, Tuesday,
Oh,
Wednesday.
Sorry, there's another thing on the calendar on that Wednesday for me, so that's why I threw me off.
So Wednesday,
I probably
Tuesday,
did.
Wednesday.
So Wednesday the 12th,
Yes.
Tuesday the 25th,
Mhm.
Wednesday the 2nd of April.
Yes.
All at 6:30.
All 6:30?
All 6:30, yep.
And what I would just say, when you're looking at what you want us to cover next meeting, keep in mind, we have some, again, we have some more old business for the next meeting, so.
I would suggest that we finish this section and then we talk about wards and the old business, because we have a ton of old business pieces to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll get
Sounds
us,
good.
okay. All right. Any other public comment? Yeah.
Wards and changing the number of years. I don't know.
You can get, I was gonna say, you get sworn in, Sonia.
All right. Please state your name and address for the record.
Simon Macron, 4889 Garnet Circle.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that what you are about to say shall be the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm wearing two hats tonight. I'm wearing the resident hat and I'm gonna wear my clerk of council hat, which thank you for addressing everything you guys have addressed so far. I really appreciate it. Just quickly, you guys are talking about the term of the president of council. As a resident, I don't think I really care so much. As a clerk of council person, it is kind of hard having a new boss every year. And it's whatever you guys decide, I'm fine with, because I've had to deal with it already. But that's just like, I get a new boss every year that, could have a potentially a new boss every year. It did have a problem with a couple of things that were going on, and then, you have to change things the way you do things. But it's doable. It's my job. I can handle it, but that's just something to like.
It might make your job easier.
Yeah.
That's good.
I support, and I also used to work for another local city, city of Hudson, so this is my resident person here. I support staggered terms of council members. I could not believe when I started working here that potentially we could have a whole new council. And you want people that have
Some experience.
experience on your council. And so that's just a resident thought. As a clerk, whatever happens, happens. I'm fine with that. Council chambers thing that you guys talked about, it did happen because of COVID, because I was here, near all of that. And most times, and you guys wanted to do the language or whatever, most times council will always meet in those council chambers. I think this comes up with COVID, and you might have, and I've seen this at another city that I worked at, there was something very controversial. So that city chose to change the location to a high school auditorium or something like that. But that doesn't happen that often. But, we do have sometimes a packed crowd in there, like Miller's Landing was one of them. So that's just, I don't know if you want to clean that up or just make sure you just take that into your notes, whatever. I already talked to you guys about the clerk of council office, and thank you for not understanding that. Just so you know, the state of the city mayor's report is going to be during the mayor's report at the council meeting. Is that all I have for you guys? I have more. I do appreciate this. I do. There's things that I've been waiting for this charter review, and I never spoke at when I worked in the city of Hudson, I never spoke at their charter review, but I was on a resident, so I do appreciate everything you guys are doing and what you're considering, and note that I might be here at somebody's meeting wearing my two hats, but I want to let you know.
I should buy you two hats so you can actually switch them out, yellow versus green.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
We allowed to ask questions. Wait, can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
So on location, you mentioned, what's your opinion? Do you think it's okay the way it is and all that? Or do you think we should?
On the location of the council chambers?
Well, or do you think that we should change the charter so that it specifically states only council?
No, I don't think you should have only council chambers. I think if you want to stress that has to be the first
protocol, but
first protocol, but there's going to be things that could happen.
If necessary type of thing.
Yeah.
Another location can be chosen to accommodate a larger crowd or something.
Yeah.
I think it's
Or the
really
way
reasonable.
it is today, do you have an opinion on the way it is written currently?
I have to reread it because I didn't bring it. I printed out only a couple of them.
I think it basically just says, I don't think
They
it
can
gave a
choose,
location,
yeah.
just states-
Somewhere in the city of,
Right, within the city of Stow.
Yeah, and I think they did that broad too, because now we have a senior community center. I don't have that.
so they could, yeah.
you know.
Kudos there, kudos to the gym.
So another way of doing it possibly, and you're not to give you more homework, but maybe think about this and if we want to move forward with it, then give you homework on this, but just to add the words that can accommodate larger crowds than what council chambers can accommodate. So if they're not moving it in here, with there's 500 people sitting outside waiting to
Mhm.
get in, and
Yeah.
they move it in
Yeah.
here because what they want to move it in.
Does that also clear, like, if we had to go something with the pandemic, where we had to do something virtual, would that accommodate that?
I'd have to add probably some language to accommodate that too.
Didn't the virtual piece get also,
The virtual piece was by state law.
Yeah,
And like,
that's
we
true.
can't run afoul of that.
Right.
And that, sunsetted, like they extended it at one point, but it sunsetted.
yeah, so it wouldn't matter.
Well,
So,
couldn't you
just leave it there.
to just say, be held in the chambers or,
Yeah, no, I think I could be wrong. That's what Rick's
Yeah, that's
asking for.
exactly.
or,
Yeah,
you know,
But nothing, but not a room small, like not a location smaller than.
The
current
chamber.
is there.
Yeah,
The
that's
chamber,
one thing too.
yeah,
or something like that.
yeah. I can play with some language, and of course, I can present it. If you guys don't like it, we can change it again. Like that's, but yeah, I can.
Okay, I'm trying not to add too much to your.
Yeah.
We,
If that one is not completed, it is not a priority for next meeting.
just to
I
make you
got you.
feel better next week, we're
I
gonna
just
bring
wanted to
you a
make sure
colored book
we were
with crayons.
I can just see that happening, and I said I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
Some
Something
balloons.
that happens all the time.
For all the extra hours we're giving in for
Do we have
work.
any more questions? Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Any other business? Oop,
I don't know if this falls under other business or not, but at the end of last week's meeting, Mr. Herman talked about like a town hall or, you know, becoming more efficient in terms of getting public comment. I don't know if there was anything more we wanted to do with that, or, I mean, I would like to see us have the town hall, and it's something, and I think you talked about, well, once we have some pieces of legislation, go and have a town hall and get public comment. But I would love to get more input from residents as to what their thoughts are on the current charter, if there's something that they would like to bring. How would we accommodate something along those lines? And Kyle, since you're here, I don't know if you have further comment on that or how we would might want to do that.
May I make one suggestion? I would have known this meeting existed if I'm not in the loop on things.
Hmm.
I think if we got the meetings out on.
yeah,
I emailed Parks, but I don't know if they ever did the blast. But
I don't think they did a blast.
I was gonna say, I did mention it, but I sent,
No, I know, yeah.
Request of us to do that, so.
yeah, I sent.
we'll follow up and make sure
Because
these
I think they
meetings
put
are
on
on
the
the list
calendar
to
for
blast out.
Okay, yeah.
But as a commission, what do you, I mean, my thought is I would love to get more input from residents versus us going to them. I would rather sort of check it versus a push-pull type of situation. Get them to come to us and give some suggestions. Well, what about this or what about that, and some thoughts versus, hey, this is what we've come up with. Give us your feedback.
Well, I think that can be used as a way to pull feedback in, like having a chunk of some pieces, so there's some substantive topic, but then it's open to all topic, but at least that we have a chunk, so they're not like,
Exactly.
there's at least some items to break the ice on, to have a conversation, then allow for all suggestions, all feedback, but having something for that they can bring and say, this is maybe one area that I want to talk about, but then I also have these thoughts on the other piece. Just to force some engagement in it before they, because there's certain people that read the charter, and there's a bunch of people that don't until they realize there's something might be changed in the charter.
Right.
And that's when they read it. That's the first time I read it, was the last election cycle, when I was like, what's changing? And that would have been, I would have never shown up unless I had seen that piece before. So that's just my thoughts on it, so.
Okay.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, something you could do to make this make that situation more streamlined is as you're going through these and you've made determinations of what you might want to change, you can work with those piecemeal in a forum setting as you guys were talking about. That way you're not talking about all 22 sections of the charter at every meeting. You may be there for 8 hours.
12:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's say you go through these first 5 and you're like, all right, we have determined that, okay, we want to make X, Y, and Z changes. Set up some kind of a town hall process where people come and hear what those potential changes are. They give their opinion on it. And then maybe someone else comes in there and says, hey, I noticed that you talked about this section here and this one here, but I have thoughts on this one. And then maybe you come back and say, yeah, that's not a bad idea. We can do that too.
Perfect. Okay, good. So, I just wanted to make sure we were more focused on making sure that we get that feedback there. I greatly appreciate you guys.
And just so, and we're on the topic of getting more public engagement and everything, I will continue to give during my report at city council updates on where we're at, what we're doing, when our next meetings are as well. So that's another forum we can get that out as well.
I'm gonna start blasting it on my social media too. Councilman, what you had something you wanted to say?
Oh, I was just gonna add, if you want me to, Kyle Herman, 3652 Highwood Avenue, I promise to.
We're asking you a question at this point, so I don't, because we're asking the question, we don't necessarily have.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am trying to figure this out for myself of how can we help people get more civically engaged in our city. And I've been exploring different ideas, like there's different national like groups and with different cities doing things like citizen assemblies where they do a lottery to convene a bunch of people together at random in order to like do things similar to what you're doing with the charter review. And what?
That sounds terrible.
The thing I love about this group in particular is that there were 7 people who applied, and the 7 of you happened to represent a like demographic cross section of our city in many ways. And so in some ways, I feel like we almost like organically got like a mini citizens assembly.
Way to go, guys!
From among people who like actually care and understand like local government and the importance of the charter, because it's so abstract to most people like out on the street that you're talking to. Like our charter is our constitution for our city, and this commission is like a mini constitutional convention. Like no, like I'm a former history and civics teacher, and like this is the nerdy way that I see it. But I know that most people don't see it that way. But I think that if all of us are sort of intentional about inviting people in, I wouldn't expect a bunch of people to just like come and like sit in on every meeting or anything like that. But just for whenever you all have the opportunity to talk to people about what you're doing here and your experience here and some of the ideas that you're talking about, and just let people know that you want their feedback, want their ideas, whether it's just writing in or coming to an actual meeting or a town hall when you get to that point. And I think that we have a lot of civic activism in our city. There are a bunch of different groups, like service-oriented groups that might not necessarily feel like government stuff is important, but I think that reaching out to these different groups could be also a good way to engage and get feedback as well.
So with that being said, is there anything in the rules that would preclude us as a group or one of us representing the group if we chose to do this at like the Citizens for Nonpartisan Politics group? They have a monthly meeting or, wherever, right? There's nothing.
Going and polling them or asking questions and showing
Or
up
just
there.
showing up there or having, if they approached us to say, hey, does somebody want to go and talk, give us an update of what's going on at the Charter Review Commission. There's no rule that says that we can't do that, right?
No, the only thing I would caution is from your first night here
Yeah,
with your
none
training,
of us think of-
open meeting requirements. So as long as you're not having a quorum of you show up
Right.
to do that and discuss it, you are absolutely able to determine you're going to be the liaison to this civic group, you're gonna be this, and it can be informal. It doesn't have to be a formal, you've said, this is the designee. If that is something that this commission wants to do, as members, you're able to go and do that.
Okay, it just can't be more than 4 of us. 4 or
Correct.
more of us.
Yep.
I would ask that if we are doing that as members of the commission, that we just at least let each other know.
Mhm.
So like if I'm thinking I'm a Rotarian in Kent and I go to Rotary here for the breakfast meeting, that we make sure that we all know that, so that way I don't go one week and Denny goes the next week and then Dennis goes the next week. So we don't get, and we have no clue that all of us went. I think it's good for us to know who has gone to what locations, so that way we're not accidentally bombarding with wrong messaging or repeated messaging that gets annoying.
I agree with that.
And if you wanna let us know in the law department, we can keep track of that and send it out as the secretary. And I can send that out as the secretary, just to keep a running tally so everyone knows.
I want an accidental meeting.
So should we let just you know or let all members?
I would say just let us know so that we can blast it out. That way we're not running afoul of hitting reply all and saying, oh, I was planning on going to that meeting or whatever.
Okay.
Okay?
Makes sense.
Sound good?
I chat GPT'd that question, by the way, on how you get information from 40,000 people. It's got a lot of information for us, but that's one. It also said just 2 more if we wanted to in the future. We could do workshops, small group discussions. So if there's something really interesting here, we could throw out a notice and say, hey, we're gonna have a couple people at the library and one at the fire station number 3 and
See who shows up to which location.
I couldn't resist. But the other one was like doing like a Google form or a Survey Monkey. So we could probably even drum up like maybe some open-ended questions on what things people would like us to pay attention to, or if there's something there, say, put that out to the public in that way and put it in different forms.
And the city has done surveys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've been doing them for the code review.
Yeah. So there's a lot more on there, but those will be 2.
I think those are all ideas that we should think about.
Any other business? I need a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Good job, guys.
We have to vote on it, don't we?